Man, guys, when I say the word witch, it conjures up all kind of different visions. Visions of the old girl jumping on her border broom and with her long black pointy hat and a black cat usually trailing somewhere behind her. And she flies across the moon. Such images make you think of Halloween. But what is the real history of the witches of Halloween? How did this all become a thing in popular society? Y'all hang tight. We're about to dive in.
T-bone roars like a thunderstorm blast. Engine growling as the trees rush past. Wheels on fire carve the mountain's face. The legend rides with a reckless grace. T-bone shadow cuts the sky through the peaks where
Now, when I talk about witches, guys, like I said, it conjures up the old image of the old girl on her broom. She's got the green face and the long nose with the word on the end of it. It's very much a commercial Halloween ideal of what a witch is. But growing up the way I did in Appalachia, the word witch has a little bit different meaning to it. But whether it's the old girl who flies across the moon on Halloween night, or it's the old lady who lives out in the woods by herself, that people go to because she knows how to mix up roots and uses herbs, and she knows how to make people feel better when they're sick. She might even know how to save their lives. So, to understand the history of witches, we have to understand what the witch is. Now, like I said, in Appalachia for us, and this is all I can speak to because I live here, witches were very much, back in the old days, midwives and, healers. They knew how to mix up herbs. They knew how to take roots, like, my grandpa and a lot of members of my family would use the yellow root as stomach medicine for any kind of digestion trouble that you might be having. And they would also use lady slipper, just all kinds of different stuff, ginseng. But what about the witches who perform magic? Now, y'all have heard me say, if you've been around this channel for a while, that I believe, as a lot of folks believe, that magic is just magic. It's not good, it's not bad. Magic is just there, and whether it is good magic or bad magic depends on the person using it. And that's very much where we start this journey in a history of witches. Now, growing up, my mother was from a large family. She had 8 sisters. So in that family, there was a couple of the aunts who were mystics, as you would call them, or witches, as modern day calls them. But it's not that they flew on brooms and ushered in Halloween. It's just that they knew how to read cards. They knew how to mix roots. They knew how to read tea leaves, look at coffee grounds. Most of them were palm readers. But I grew up with a healthy fascination of the occult, I guess is what you would call it. Although that's not what we called it back in the day. But I understood that there was power in this stuff. I understood that there was power in being able to heal people. I understood that, there was a certain mysticism that come along with burning white sage to drive evil spirits out of a home, to set out certain crystals for energy vibration. I grew up being taught about this stuff from a couple of my aunts. But for the preface episode, I want to talk about one lady in particular. Now, Georgia Hillbilly, who's probably in the chat with you guys with us right now, He might have heard this name when I say it. He may know exactly who I'm talking about. But I'm talking about a lady who lived in Copperhill, Tennessee, who went by the name Miss Ethel Boggs. Now, Miss Ethel Boggs, and I will pull my glasses off because I want you guys to be able to see me when I say this. This was one of the finest women I've ever known in my whole life. She was a beautiful person inside and out. Now, my aunts had talked to me several times, as they did, about things, and about Miss Ethel Boggs. Come to find out later on that my aunts had spent a lot of time with Ethel, honing their craft, learning things, studying. And for a teenage T-Bone who would very first meet Miss Ethel Boggs, I believe I was 16 or 17. She would have a pretty big impact on my life over a 4 to 5 year period. Now, this was in the 1990s, and of course, Miss Ethel was already in her 80s. So she was very much a curiosity for me. I grown up listening to people talk about her and hearing the stories that they would tell. But it wasn't until I got to meet the old girl myself that I really understood and would continue to understand what kind of person she actually was. My first encounter with Miss Ethel Boggs would come on a Saturday night. I had two friends with me. I think it was two. There was two of us. Of course, we decided we was going to go see Miss Ethel. I had learned where her house was. She lived in Copperhill, and she lived in a pretty residential area, actually. But we walked up on the porch and, of course, knocked on the door. Now, we were told that when you went to see Miss Ethel, you had to take a treat for her dog. And a lot of people now would say that her dog talked. But her dog was a little Chihuahua that was blind in one of its eyes. I think it was its left eye, which was curious because Miss Ethel was also blind in her left eye. But I introduced myself, and I told her exactly who I was, and she knew me. She said, yeah. She said, I've talked to your aunts about you before. So our first encounter was nothing to do really with any kind of witchy stuff. We just sat down on her front porch, and everybody was laughing and talking, and we were getting to know Miss Ethel. And, you know, everybody had up to that point had told me how unapproachable she was. Well, my encounter was that she was not only approachable, she enjoyed having the company. Now, Miss Ethel was, like I said, in her 80s. So she had grown up watching the world change and evolve. She had seen it go through very hard times with the Depression, and she had got to see it go through very good times. She's seen it change. She's seen it evolve. Now, Miss Ethel wasn't no rich person by any means, and she never had fancy anything. She lived in a modest home, wore modest clothes, and she was never bitter about her position in life. In fact, she loved her life, and she loved recalling stories and telling them. So as time went on, as it does, I finally broached the subject of witchcraft with her. And we sit and we talked. And of course, my friends who would come with me was there. And she knew, like I said, she knew my aunts. And she talked to me about working with them. Now, Miss Ethel loved to read cards. You know, some were palm readers, some read tea leaves. Miss Ethel's specialty was reading cards. And not the big tarot cards like you see today. These old girls would read off of just a bicycle deck of playing cards, regular poker cards. Now, I was standoffish because I had my cards. My aunts would read my cards for me all the time. But this one particular night, I had been standoffish for a while, and Miss Ethel said, well, Dunn, and that's why she called me, Dunn. She said, when are you going to let me read yours? And I thought, you know what? Miss Ethel, let's go ahead and do it tonight. So she got excited because she had not yet got to read my cards. So she began, and she began with the flipping of the 3 cards, as you do. And about midway through the reading, she stopped. And she just point blank said, "I don't want to read anymore." And I knew what was going on, and I knew why she stopped. Because in the other readings that I had been in, the death card turned up. Now, if you don't understand the meaning of the death card in tarot, I really can't explain it to you, but we have readers that are here watching this video who can probably tell you more about it than I can. But the reason that the death card kept turning up so much in my readings was because from a very young age I had been surrounded by death. My grandma Higdon had passed away in 1987. My mom was murdered in 1988. I was going to lose my grandpa Dunn in 1990. So from 1987 up to 1994, I had lost Sarge Inslee. I know Hillbilly remembers Sarge. I had lost a lot of people in my life. A lot of people who made impressions on me as I was a kid growing up. So the death card would turn up in my readings quite a bit, and a lot of folks who read cards will tell you it makes them uncomfortable when the death card keeps turning up. So she said, "I don't want to read no more tonight." So time rocked on, and she got to feeling pretty spunky again. And just one night out of the blue, she said, "Let me do a reading on you." She said, "I feel like right now is the time for me to do a reading." So, of course, I said, "Okay, let's do it." And again, about midway through the reading, the death card turned up. And, of course, we had talked about why the death card was turning up and why she kept seeing it. And I think my aunt had actually talked to her about it because I would talk to my aunt about the visits that I was having with Miss Ethel. And it wasn't that it was scaring her. It was just that it made her uncomfortable because she couldn't understand why the death card was turning up on someone so young. Now, usually when someone's young and they don't, if they're not around a bunch of death, the death card usually doesn't turn up in the presence time of the reading. So we got past that and we got on into the future reading. And Miss Ethel got confused. And she stopped reading. And I said, "Don't tell me you found the death card in my future." She said, "No." She said, "It's nothing like that." She said, "Ask your friends if they'll run to town real quick so I can talk to you by yourself." I thought, okay, what the crap's this all about? But I did, and they left. And she said, I'm not concerned about your future. She said, "But it's very curious." She said, "I can't peg down your future." And my first thought was, well, crap, am I going to die? Is that the reason you can't peg my future? And she said, "No." She said, your future keeps bouncing around all over the place." And I thought, well, okay, what the crap does that mean? Because usually in these readings, once the line is made, like the line on your hand, you've heard palm readers read, once that line is set, they can usually predict kind of what's going to happen with you in the future. Or they can at least tell you what to look for. But she couldn't with me. She said, "You're bouncing all over the place." She said, "I'm not getting a specific point of reference for your future." So looking back on that now, some 35 years later, I think it was because of the way I lived. Firefighting, pro wrestling, different jobs, working out of town, traveling, motorcycle vlogging, moto vlogging, sitting here talking to you. I very much was active throughout the last 30 years. And, a lot of times you can just brush over it when you're doing a reading like that. You talk about marriage, talk about kids, talk about this, talk about that. But everything that I was doing was overlapping each other. So she couldn't get a direct line on what I was doing. So she would always tell everybody who came with me or who would show up while I was there, and she'd say, "This is done," and I can't get a line on done. She'd say, "I don't know if it's because he's crazy or I'm crazy," and of course we would all laugh and have a big joke out of it. So T-Bone, why are you telling us this? Well, I'm talking to you about this because this very much leads into the Halloween series, Rolling with T-Bone Presents A History in Witches. I kind of wanted to share this with you because y'all who've been with me for a while on the channel, y'all know I get nostalgic about stuff. Uh, and I was studying about the witches and about this series that I'm going to shoot, and Miss Ethel came just flooding into my memories, and I could hear her, see her, feel her presence, and I spent about a 4.5 year period there. Well, I spent a lot of time with Miss Ethel on the weekends. I would go see her quite a bit. And guys, this lady became very important to me. Not because of reading cards or anything like that. It's just because Miss Ethel was a genuinely beautiful person. Of course, time had taken some of her vision away. She couldn't hear good. But she also didn't have a whole lot of people in her life, family-wise, who could check in on her. So me and others would check in on her, and if she needed things from the store, we would run errands for her. She became everybody's grandmother, if that makes sense. And of course, during the course of that time, we got to know her, and she got to know us. But she was just a beautiful person. And one night, she prompted the conversation. I didn't really prompt the conversation, she did, but we were all sitting around there. And guys, when I say there was a group of us, there was about 10 people sitting around on her porch. And it was probably spring, I think. It was probably late spring. We were all sitting outside. It was comfortable and beautiful, and the girls was there, and they were talking about magic, and she said, "I want to tell you guys the secret of magic." And I thought, wow. And then she was the one who very first said to me, "Magic is magic. Magic just is. It's neither good nor bad. The person using it is what makes magic good or bad." And she said, one of the most prolific things I ever heard. She said, "Real magic comes from God." Up to this time, I had heard her talk about God in passing, but she said those of us who are able to see things and are able to mix up herbs and what people call potions to help people who are sick, or to help a pregnant mother who's not feeling good, or to be able to help a newborn baby who might have been born breached, or she said the real power is God. God allows us the ability to get the knowledge to help people here on earth. She said the real power and the real magic is God. And man, tell you guys, when she said that, you could have heard a pin drop on her front porch. And sadly, time would go on, and we would lose Miss Ethel. She would go on to be with the Lord. She passed away, and I think it was either early 98 or late 97 she passed away. And it broke my heart when I heard that she had passed, because she had become a very special person in our life. Those of us who enjoyed going and seeing her and hanging out. She loved telling stories. So T-Bone, what does any of this got to do with the history of witches? Well, this has to do with kind of what we're going to be talking about in this series. Is we're going to be talking about the witch trials. And we're going to be talking about how people take the story like I just told about Miss Ethel, turn it sideways and get it all screwed up. And guys, that ended up causing tens of thousands of people to be wrongfully accused of witchcraft and to be hung or burned at the stake. So, we have come to the point. So, Oh, I tell you guys, I hope you enjoyed this preface episode of Rolling with T-Bone Presents A History in Witches. So be here the next few Monday nights if you want to hear more, because we begin at the beginning. And to begin at the beginning, we have to go all the way back to 1589 to get this show started right. So, if you're new here, welcome in. My name's T-Bone. I know you came in here thinking I shoot motorcycle content. I do. But as you're seeing, I also shoot any kind of content, really. Now, with these upcoming witch episodes, the history of witches, we will be on the motorcycle talking about them. So you're going to get your motorcycle riding in. I know some of y'all are saying, well, T-Bone getting really lazy. He just likes to sit down and talk now. He don't like to ride his motorcycle, but I still love my motorcycle. But if you are new here, welcome in. I don't want you to click subscribe right now. I would like for you to go backwards from here and check out some of the old episodes. And even if you're still not sure, stick around through the next 4 Mondays as we do a history of witches. And then come back and be with us on October the 31st. Halloween night will be on a Friday this year. And at 7:30 p.m., Halloween night, good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, will be the final episode in this series, A History of Witches. Guys, we're going to talk about a witch and a ghost. And we're going to talk about Halloween night, how this ghost, who was a witch, she was believed to be a witch. We're going to talk about how she is actually the only known case in America of a ghost killing a human being. So y'all stay tuned for that. But until the next time, guys, thank y'all for hanging out with me as I took this stroll down memory lane. So until the next time, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Don't worry about what's going bump in the night. Just pull your shades down, close your doors, and lock them. You're going to be okay. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And hey, thanks for watching.